Fall is finally upon us. It's November 1st, and I always think that this is really the time for fall. You know, it's in the Bay Area, I think there's two ways of looking at fall. There's either it's a very long fall or it's a very short one. Now, for those who feel it's a long fall, we know that in September is when everybody else sells the idea that it's fall is here, right? You know, the school starts, fall fashion, and for the landscape, we have some trees and shrubs and even native poison oak that starts to turn for fall color as early as September. But often that's because of drought stress. You know, there's not enough water, so they're saying, I'm tired, I'm just gonna go to sleep. So they go into a early fall dormancy, let's put it that way, or early winter dormancy is technically what it would be. In fact, there is a native tree that goes dormant even earlier. So you might see a little bit of fall color, and those little spots of color will remind people that it is the fall season. But it's not like a New England brilliance, right? It's just a tree here, a shrub there, and soon people have to rely on fall decorating. So, you know, to remind them that it's fall. So we have, you know, fall wreaths and pumpkins and all the things that herald in primarily Halloween, but of course fall. But the weather is so fantastic. You know, it's not really cold, it's cooler, and the days are certainly warm. And as I've mentioned before, we have the Diablo winds come in sort of mid-October, which totally makes us think that it's not fall, that we want to be at the beach. And finally they stop. Halloween arrives, Old Hallows Eve is upon us. The nights are cooler, the mornings are colder, and now plants are starting to get the idea that maybe it's time to go to sleep. So even our birch tree and a few other, well, actually all of our trees are still nice, lush and green, but I think they're getting a sense that it's time. And so I think in the next couple of weeks we're going to start seeing that dramatic change of color. And I look forward to it. It's my favorite time of year. But going back to elongating the autumn season, one of the other things is to rely on flowers and other things not really related to fall leaves, right? So I've just shown you a few examples of what I've been talking about. The final one is this plant, which is really our fall showstopper. This is Epilobium canum, or California fuchsia. And it's pretty obvious why it got its name as being a fuchsia. I mean, California being native. Fuchsia is these flowers that remotely resemble a fuchsia. Yeah, I don't know if I buy that, but let's go with it. They're pretty much always in this beautiful orange, okay, that's another subject, you know. Is orange in the garden an acceptable color? Maybe for a modern design, but not for, say, a traditional English perennial garden. it's considered garish. That's another subject for designers. But, this is pretty stunning, and it really is, for me, helps me enjoy a longer fall season when this comes into bloom in the garden. So Epilobium canum used to have a different name, and you can always know the age of a designer or a horticulturalist. Well, no. Horticulturists are more up on it. Designers, landscape designers, if they use older names and haven't adapted their database to new names, new understanding of plants that change the names. So while the current name, which is probably going to be the one that sticks, is Epilobium canum, the former name was Zauschneria canum. And that's sort of from my generation, so I'm getting used to the new name. Anyway, obviously it's a fall bloomer, and it is an herbaceous perennial. Well, it's a woody perennial. If you look down there, there's more wood in it. Oh, here comes a car. Okay, I'll let that go. So woody, I have to look if it's, typically plants that are woody are considered shrubs, but this one can die back to the ground every year, so it's quite often that I'm hacking this all the way to the ground. So I'm going to go with perennial unless something, unless I'm forgetting something, which is quite often. What is fabulous about this plant is that hummingbirds love it. I see them at it all the time during this time of year, especially since there are fewer plants that are available to them during this time of year, particularly in the native species. So this elongates their season as well, of getting food all the way until pretty much the first frosts. There'll be some blooms. Now, this particular plant, I've got to get up from my stoop here. Okay, so here's the one we've been looking at. And what we're finding is that it readily reseeds. See, it's sort of traveling down the planter bed here. And behind me, which I won't show you because that's looking into the sun, is a whole bunch more, which is where I originally planted it. And it's just been doing this travel. So prolific. Anyway, this one's kind of laying down. It's on a slope. And I'm just going to let them keep going. Now, that brings up the discussion about plants that readily reseed. There's a number of subjects here, or thoughts here. One is, if it's non-native, and this is the primary one, and it reseeds, and it gets out of control, like pampas grass and broom are a couple of them that come to mind, or the Mexican fan palm. They are all considered invasive now because they readily reseed and get out of control, and they're considered not native to California. Now, the Mexican fan palm is a different subject because I think that one's migrating because of the climate change. So we won't go into more details there, but that's something to consider. Plants do not know borders. The other thought is that with plants like Epilobium, there are a number of cultivars. And when a plant is propagated as a cultivar, native plant purists will say it's no longer a native. In fact, taking it a step further, the only native plant to purists are the ones that actually come from a very specific location. So if there was this Epilobium that was occurring naturally here, then that should be the one to plant. It's up to you what you decide. This one I bought at a nursery. It's a cultivar. I'm going to have to look up the name. And if it recedes and continues down the road and ultimately into a natural area, which I don't think is going to happen, by the way. I'm going to be more diligent about that. Is it considered invasive to the environment, to the native area? And I'm curious to know what all the different arguments are about that. Now, the reason why I don't think it's going to do any harm here is that it's got quite a ways to go before it's out of control, and I usually cut it down, like I said, in the winter, before too many seeds get away. And I pull the seed plants wherever I don't want them. And so I take a note each year, like, here's one growing in the middle of this plant, so I want to take that out. So there you go. I think Epilobium is something for a California garden pretty much anywhere in the state. And if you want to elongate your fall season with flowers, this is a good one, and help out the hummingbirds. Very drought tolerant, small grayish leaves, and the cultivars have different depths of color from red to orange. And I think there's different sizes, mature growing sizes. So here we go. We're going into fall. Let's see what happens. Have a lovely day.